Hello everyone and welcome back to NeweggTV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an overview of these ASRock Fatal1ty Killer series motherboards featuring platforms from both AMD and Intel. So first off, we're looking at the FM2 A88X Plus. So this is a socket FM2 Plus motherboard that uses the A88X chipset. I'm going to use this retail box to tell you guys some features that are actually across the board for all four of these motherboards that we're talking about today. So for starters, we get the ASRock Fatal1ty Killer E2200 NIC. That's the network interface card, and that's going to allow you to do packet prioritization and packet shaping to prioritize your gaming packet over other things that you might be transferring across your internet. So better pings and better responses from the internet connection that you have. You're also going to get a $25 XSplit 3-month premium license with all of these motherboards, or you get one with each motherboard, so you can use that to do your premium XSplit streaming. And then you're going to have Windows 8 or Windows 8.1 support across the board for these, as well as at least two-way AMD Crossfire support for all these. And then the 990FX as well as the Z87 motherboard are also going to give you official NVIDIA two-way SLI support as well. So that is quite nice. Flipping around to the back, a few more features here that I want to point out that are across the board. So Purity Sound is one of those, and that is the combination of the Realtek ALC 1150 audio codec chip that gives you 115 decibel signal-to-noise ratio. They're also combining that with a differential amplifier from Texas Instruments. So you have both of those available to give you an increased or improved sound experience with less distortion and more details. And you can also get support for up to 600 ohm headphones if you're going to be using that amplifier. So that's very nice to have. The sniper key is also available, the key master function that you can see right there is also available apparently on all of these motherboards except for the 990FX motherboard, so sorry for you 990FX lovers. But you do have the ability to set up a software-based sniper key for your mouse. You can also set up macro keys that you can use for keyboard shortcuts, which is also quite helpful. And then down here you have the gaming armor section, which is referring to some of the connectors that they're using on the board. So high density power connectors that can reduce power loss and decrease the power connector's temperature. So 15 micron Goldfinger connections in those, as well as available in the SLI and Crossfire X power connectors. And of course that Killer LAN as well as the Purity Sound that we already mentioned. Here's a look at the motherboard. Again, we're still on the FM2 A88X Plus Killer, and as you can see, we have the black and red theme, which is kind of the Fatal1ty colors. On the back, we can see it's got a kind of semi-glossy black PCB, but everything is maintained or held on with Phillips head screws. And here on the front of the board, just wanted to point out, you got your pretty standard I/O down there at the bottom, 3 USB 2.0 ports down there as well. Above that, we have the PCI Express area right there, so you have a full PCI Express Gen 3 slot right there, that's X16. You also have a PCI Express Gen 2.0 X8, also X16, that's available right there. A couple X1 slots for PCI Express, and then down here we have 1, 2, and 3 legacy PCI slots, so if you have older devices, you can go with those. Purity Sound codec chip is got some EMI shielding there on the left-hand side. And then on the right, we have the Fatal1ty Gaming Gear heatsink, which is covering up the A88X chipset. Over here, we have some serial ATA, so those are provided with serial ATA serial ATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second support. So you can plug in plenty of drives, and all those are Gen 3. And then moving up the side of the board, you've got USB 3.0 front panel header over there. And then above that, you have your DIMM slots, so your memory, which is located right here from bottom to top. Again, those are color-coded red and black because it is dual-channel memory, so make sure you install your paired sticks. To the left of that, we have our FM2 Plus socket. This is backwards compatible with FM2 APUs as well as the newer FM2 Plus, so you can go with Kaveri if you were going that route. And of course, it's maintaining AMD's standardized mounting methods, so you have lots of compatibility with different types of CPU coolers. For I/O, over on this side, we have a couple USB 2.0 ports. This one on top is the Fatal1ty mouse port, so you can plug in there and you can manually adjust your polling rate. Combo Ps2 port right there for a mouse or keyboard. Video outs here for the APUs, so you've got a DVI, HDMI, as well as VGA. 4 USB 3.0 ports back there. A couple more USB 2.0 ports. There's your Killer NIC, as well as your analog I/O for your audio. And moving on to the 990FX board here, this is the 990FX Killer. So this is a AM3 or AM3 Plus socket. Well, this is actually the AM3 Plus socket, but it is also backwards compatible with AM3 designated CPUs from AMD. So this is CPU only, and if you're buying this board, you will need to get a graphics solution of some kind. So you'll be wanting to go with a discrete graphics card. The look and feel of the board is maintaining the look of this line, since this is a series of motherboards. So black and red once again throughout. Same black PCB. I'm going to stop showing you guys the black PCB on the back because you'll probably get bored of that. But Phillips head screws again holding on the heat sinks. Down here at the bottom we have some I/O once again. There's a Molex supplemental plug. You're only probably going to need to plug that in if you're running multiple video cards. The PCI area right above that, you have PCI Express Gen 2 support here, since that is what the AM3 Plus CPUs are capable of. So you have a X16 slot right here. Another full-length X16 slot right there, but these will run at X8 and X8 if you're plugging both of them in. And then you have an X4 slot down there at the bottom, as well as a couple X1 slots, the shorter black ones right there. You can also see the Purity sound as well as the Killer E2200 NIC right there. There's a bit of background lighting or trace lighting that's going to go along the PCB right there as well, which is going to give it a pretty cool look. And then an interesting feature of this board that I wanted to point out is this little slot right there. That's an NGFF, for Next Generation Form Factor M.2 slot. So that's designed for newer SSDs that aren't even serial ATA. And you can plug that in, and it's a PCI Express Gen 2 X2 connection. So I should be able to get some very nice SSD performance out of that, since it connects directly to the PCI Express bus. To the right of that, once again, you have your chipset cover, and this is again the 990FX chipset. This would actually be the Southbridge chipset right there. The 990FX is up here at the top. To the right of that, you have 5 serial ATA connection points right there. These are all SATA revision 3 once again. I'm sorry, SATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second, and there's a 6th one available via eSATA on the back of the board. Moving up the side of the board, we have a USB 3.0 internal header right there with a cap on it that really doesn't want to come off. There we go. And so you can plug in an internal USB 3.0 device right there. Also a USB 3.0 front panel header and a couple more USB 2.0 front panel headers right there. Here once again is your memory connection points. So this is again, you can use DDR3 memory. They are color coded once again, so you're going to want to use dual channel kits, so probably sets of 2 for those, and you do have memory overclocking support speeds for up to 2600, but again, that's going to vary based on the memory that you choose as well as the CPU that you choose. So your CPU socket is right here, and again, this is the AM3 Plus socket, backwards compatible with AM2, and again, that same AMD mounting solution right there, so you can make sure to reuse maybe an old CPU cooling solution if that's something that you have available to you. Some heat sinks right there to keep the power delivery nice and cool, and then we'll close with the I/O on the back one more time. So we have Ps2 ports right there, one for a mouse, one for a keyboard, a couple USB 2, 4 USB 3.0 right there. 4 more USB 2.0, so that gives you a total of 6 on the back. There's that 6th SATA port right there in the form of an eSATA slot. This once again has that mouse port that you can connect and control your mouse's polling rate. Your Killer E2200 NIC, as well as your analog I/O for audio. Next up we have the B85 Killer, and I'm using a pen now. But the B85 chipset is one that I found to be somewhat interesting upon initial look, or upon first look at this board, because B85 is sort of a cousin to the Z87 chipset that we're going to look at in the last board. B85 has slightly fewer features than what Z87 has available, but the one thing that you're probably going to want to pay closest attention to is B85 does not allow for CPU overclocking. However, that should be just fine, because if you want to overclock your CPU, go for the Z87 board. That's the one that's designed for. And often if you're looking to make a more budget gaming system, you're not going to be going with those higher-end K-type CPUs from Intel that allow overclocking. So this is a great board to use with one of the mid-level or lower-end Intel processors. And just since I'm on that point, this is a socket 1150 socket for Intel's Haswell processors, aka 4th generation core. But once again, we got the same black and red color scheme, and this one is also ATX like the other boards, although it is slightly narrower width-wise than the other ones, so that saves a little bit of space in your system. We can see standard I/O connectivity down there at the bottom once again. You have your serial ATA down there, so 4 SATA Rev 3 6 gigabits per second ports, and then also a couple SATA Rev 2 3 gigabit per second ports right there. And then for PCI and PCI Express, since you do have both of them, The top one here is your Gen 3 slot, so that's full-length X16 Gen 3, and then you have Gen 2 available via an X4 slot right there, and a couple X1 slots right there. Finally, 3 legacy PCI slots for your older PCI card devices. You also have, of course, that Purity sound as well as the Killer E2200 NIC integrated as well. And then on the right, the Fatal1ty heatsink over your B85 chipset, and that is, of course, going to be controlling these serial ATA ports, which are down there at the bottom. Up at the top of the board, you have your DDR3 DIMM slots for your memory. These are color-coded again, dual channel, so make sure you buy matched pairs, and you can support DDR3 1600 speeds officially via the Intel 4th generation Haswell processors. Also supports overclock speeds, but as with all overclocking, your mileage may vary. Then here's the 1150 socket for your Intel 4th generation Haswell processor. Socket is just the same as it would be on any other Z87 or that type of series motherboard, as long as it's socket 1150 and Haswell, not socket 1155 Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge, because those are not compatible with this one. Again, a nice heatsink there over the VRMs, although no overclocking on this board, so I guess it's just there to keep them cool and lengthen their lifespan. Supplemental CPU power up there at the top. And then I/O once again here on the side, so there's your USB 2.0, and again the Fatal1ty mouse port. There's a PS2 slot for a keyboard right there. Then you have a DVI, a VGA, as well as HDMI out, and that is for the integrated GPU that's part of your Intel 4th generation core processor. A couple USB 3.0 ports, a couple more USB 2.0 ports, your Killer NIC, and then your analog I/O for audio. And I should be pointing out that there's also a digital toslink there as well. And lastly, we have the Z87 Killer. So this is the second of 2 Intel boards, and this is again using the 1150 socket for Intel's 4th generation core processors, aka Haswell. Again, black and red, although this motherboard is a slightly different PCB color. It's a bit on the brown side, but still very dark and still blends in well with the rest of the color scheme of the board. Once again, down here at the bottom, we have your standard or typical I/O. I do want to point out that this particular board has dual BIOS chips, so that's kind of nice to have a backup. Speaking of the PCI Express area right here, you have 3 full-length X16 physically slots. So the top one here can run at X16 PCI Express Gen 3. If you're using these 2 slots, they'll run at X8 and X8, and you can also do X8, X4, and X4 using all 3 of those slots. So that will give you up to 3-way crossfire support, and then you can do 2-way NVIDIA SLI, or of course the quad abilities are also there for either side. You also have 4 PCI Express Gen 2 X1 slots for additional add-on cards if that becomes necessary. Again, the EMI shielding for your Purity sound as well as your Killer E2200 NIC up there at the top. Your Fatal1ty gaming gear heatsink over the Z87 chipset. The Z87 chipset does provide native support for serial ATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second, so all 6 of those ports are supported. And you have RAID support for RAID 0, 1, 5, 10, and I believe JBOD as well, but don't quote me on that. You have USB 3.0 connector right there, so for front panel USB 3.0 that is available. And then of course, once again, you have your memory DIMM slots. So memory DIMM support again for Haswell supports up to 1600 speed. Overclock speeds are also supported, but your mileage may vary based on your memory as well as your CPU. Here's your 1150 socket for your 4th generation core processors, aka Haswell. This is maintaining the same mounting solution that they've had backwards compatibility with mounting, or with CPU aftermarket heatsink fans from 1150, 1155, and 1156. So that's kind of nice. If you've got an older one, you want to keep using it, you can. Here is a more useful heatsink over the power delivery for your CPU, and that's going to help keep those cool, since the Z87 chipset does enable overclocking with Intel's 4th generation core processors. And then we'll finish once again with the I/O here at the back. So there's once again a Ps2 port there for a keyboard. You also have a couple USB 2.0 ports right there. Your video outs for the integrated GPU as part of your Haswell processor, so VGA, DVI, as well as HDMI. A couple more USB 2.0 ports right there, and that's once again that Fatal1ty mouse port. Then you got 4 USB 3.0 ports available. I should mention 2 HDMI ports down there at the bottom for your video outs. There's your Killer E2200 NIC, as well as your analog I/O for your integrated sound, as well as your Toslink digital. And that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the ASRock Fatal1ty Killer series of gaming motherboards. I'm Paul with NeweggTV. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave us some feedback in the comments section, or a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on how you feel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.